She raised me with love, with courage, and taught me everything about being strong. Rachel, you're the only mom I've ever known." He didn't even glance at me. The applause rang in my ears like thunder. A forgotten mother crashes her son's wedding with a bag full of buried truths and a zipper that changes everything. But before we start the video, let us know where you're watching this video. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe Story Store, and please share your thoughts about this story in comment section. To Rachel, the woman who made me who I am today. Jason's voice carried confidently through the glittering reception hall, each syllable sharp, deliberate. Glasses clinked. Laughter followed. Applause broke out like a wave. I stood motionless in my navy blue dress, tucked near the back of the room, hands clenched around the leather strap of the bag I hadn't set down all evening. My mouth was dry. My heart knocked against my ribs in quiet protest. Rachel, radiant in silver, smiled up at him, her eyes shining with pride. He smiled back, soft and sure. They looked like family, perfect, polished. A portrait in a gilded frame. He didn't look at me, not once. She raised me with love, with courage, and taught me everything about being strong. Rachel, you're the only mom I've ever known. A silence cracked open inside me, vast and blinding. The applause returned, but it was muffled, distant, like it belonged to another world. I smiled. The kind of smile you wear when your heart is bleeding behind your ribs and you don't want to stain the floor. My fingers found the zipper of the bag. I traced it slowly, back and forth, like a rosary. Inside lay every piece of the past he never saw, because someone made sure he wouldn't. Not tonight, I told myself. Not yet. But the lie had lived long enough. As the applause softened and guests turned to their wine and small talk, I stood straighter. The zipper slipped open with a quiet, decisive sound. The storm arrived before dawn, rain pelting the windows like thrown gravel. Our apartment, barely 2 rooms, felt even smaller in the dark. I was 22, barefoot, in an oversized sweatshirt, cradling a newborn who hadn't stopped crying in hours. His father stood by the door, duffel bag in hand, eyes already somewhere else. "I can't do this, Eliza," he said, his voice flat. "I never wanted this." He didn't wait for an answer. The door slammed, and just like that we were alone. I looked down at Jason, tiny and red-faced, his fists flailing at the world. I should have cried. Maybe I did, somewhere inside, but no tears came. Something locked into place that morning, a quiet kind of steel. I paced the creaky floor until the storm outside softened, whispering to him as if words could shape the future. "It's just you and me now, baby," I said. "But we're going to be okay. You'll see." He blinked up at me like he understood. I didn't know how I'd feed him next week. I didn't know how rent would get paid, but I knew I would not run. I would not leave. That was the first promise I ever made him, and I kept it. Every single day after that. Life didn't ease up, it leaned in harder. I worked graveyard shifts at a greasy diner, memorizing medication names on index cards while pouring coffee for truckers. Jason slept in a corner booth most nights, curled under my coat with saltines in his fist. I'd study on napkins, solve math problems in steam from dishwater, and dream of a life with clean sheets and steady pay. I was always exhausted, but I never let him see it. When I finally earned my nursing degree, I didn't cry at graduation. I just exhaled for the first time in years. Jason grew fast, too fast. He asked hard questions early. "Why don't we have a car? Why do we live in one room? Why does your face look so tired?" I never sugarcoated things. "Because we're building something better, one day at a time," I'd say. Eventually, he stopped asking. He started helping, packing his lunch, folding towels, reading quietly while I studied. He had my stubborn streak, my need to prove people wrong. I taught him to fight fair, to dream big, to keep his promises, and he believed me. Every scraped knee and spelling test win felt like another rung climbed. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were climbing, together, 1 inch at a time. Jason was 9 the first time I met Rachel. She was the new administrator at his school. Sharp suits, crisp voice, and a laugh that danced like wind chimes. The kind of woman who made people lean in closer. She noticed Jason right away, his curiosity, his quietness, and offered to help him with math after school. At first, I was grateful. Working double shifts left me little time to sit over fractions and word problems. Rachel had the time and the space, an immaculate house, a home office, a yard trimmed like a magazine ad. Then came piano lessons, then tennis. "Just for the weekend, Mom," Jason would say. "Her house is quieter, and she's really good at explaining stuff." I smiled, said I understood, because I wanted to. But each weekend turned into longer visits, dinners, holidays. His backpack came home less and less. He started calling her house the other place, then just home. There were no arguments, no slammed doors, just a slow drift, like a boat untethering from its dock. I told myself it was okay. She was kind, she meant well. And if Jason felt safe, wasn't that what mattered? Still, when he forgot to mention a school event or asked if Rachel could take him instead, a quiet ache started blooming inside me. I told myself it was just growing pains, but somewhere, deep down, I knew something was shifting. And once it shifted, it wouldn't come back. It was a Tuesday when Jason forgot his backpack at Rachel's house. He sounded sheepish on the phone. "Can you grab it, Mom?" "I've got practice." I hadn't been inside her house in months. It smelled like lavender and lemon polish. A photo of Jason grinned from the entryway table. Him and Rachel at a science fair, ribbons in hand. My stomach twisted, but I smiled politely when her housekeeper let me in. "Bags in the office," she said. I stepped inside Rachel's home office, careful not to touch anything. Sunlight streamed across tidy shelves, framed certificates, spotless surfaces. Then I saw it, an open drawer, not quite closed. It wasn't snooping, not really. My hand moved on instinct. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Rachel and Jason at a piano recital, at a museum, at the beach, framed, curated. A life preserved like it belonged in a gallery. One photo had a label etched in gold leaf. Our boy, Jason's first recital. I held it in my hand for a moment like it might dissolve. Our boy, not mine. I put the photo back gently, like it might break. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and traced old drawings Jason made for me, stick figures of him and me under crooked suns. "Me and Mommy," one read. Somewhere between macaroni dinners and late-night flashcard drills, someone else had rewritten our story, and I was slowly being edited out. When Jason won the full-ride scholarship to the prep school across the state, it felt like a triumph, a bright, shining moment after years of struggle. Rachel pulled the strings behind the scenes. She knew the right people, made the calls, and smoothed the path. "It's for his future, Eliza," she told me, her voice firm but almost kind. "You should be proud." I was. Proud, yes, but also painfully aware of how invisible I'd become. I wasn't invited to the orientation. Rachel was. I listened to their stories afterward, how she'd shaken hands with the principal, signed forms, and promised the school he'd succeed. I clapped the loudest at Jason's scholarship ceremony, sitting in the back, chest tight. I watched him beam under the spotlight, his eyes sparkling with hope and gratitude. But the night I wanted to tell him I loved him most, the night before he left, I found myself sitting alone on our worn couch, rehearsing words I never spoke. Instead, I wrapped his favorite blanket around me and prayed he'd remember where he came from. Rachel stepped in seamlessly, as if she'd been waiting all along. I kept my distance, watched quietly, and told myself I was giving him the chance to soar. But watching her take the lead stung in ways I couldn't explain, because sometimes love isn't enough. I collapsed at work one morning, dizzy and pale, barely able to speak. The diagnosis was a shock. Early-stage lymphoma. Jason didn't visit me in the hospital right away. I told myself he was overwhelmed, caught in exams and internships, trying to build his future. But Rachel came. "She's tougher than she looks, Eliza," Rachel said softly one afternoon. "Jason's just trying to focus. Don't burden him with this." The word burden stuck like a splinter deep inside me. Days blurred into nights of chemotherapy, needles, and endless waiting rooms. I fought with everything I had. Jason called occasionally, his voice strained but distant. I could hear the pressure in his words. Rachel was there more than he was, managing appointments, organizing meals, smoothing everything over with a practiced calm. I understood why Jason pulled away. Cancer was heavy. But each day I felt the distance grow, not just between us, but between who I was and who I'd become. When I finally beat the cancer, I thought things might heal. But something had cracked. Our bond was no longer unbreakable. And no matter how hard I tried, I felt the growing space between a mother who fought silently and a son who was learning to live without her. Jason called on a Sunday afternoon, voice lighter than I'd heard in ages. "I'm getting married, Mom. Her name's Natalie. She's incredible. You'll love her." Hearing joy in his tone should have warmed me. It did, briefly, before a familiar ache settled in my chest. Natalie sounded perfect. Warm laughter, quick wit, the kind of person who fit effortlessly into a family. Jason gushed about her kindness, how she supported him through his first job search, how she made him feel seen. "And Rachel and Dad are helping us plan most of the wedding," he added casually. "They know so many people." I smiled into the phone, though my throat tightened. "I'd love to help," I said. "Great, let me know," he replied, and hung up. Weeks passed. Rachel coordinated the venue, the florist, the seating chart. Dad handled the caterer. Natalie was kept in the loop, while I hovered on the sidelines, offered suggestions that were never requested. Then the invitation arrived, mail-stained and folded neat. A single card, stamped with Rachel's return address. I held it in my hands, fingertips trembling, reading his name and Natalie's in looping script. No note, no call, just an official reminder that our family had shifted once again. I placed the invitation on the mantel next to the baby blanket he once drew on. My heart ached for the chance to give him memories, until I remembered how I always did, quietly, invisibly, letting others take the credit. This time, I resolved, would be different. 2 nights before the wedding, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Natalie standing there alone, her expression tight, uncertain. "Can I come in?" she asked. I nodded, stepping aside. She clutched a folder to her chest like it might burn her fingers. "I found something," she said, sitting on the edge of my couch. "It was locked in a drawer in Rachel's study. I wasn't looking for it, I swear. But once I saw what it was, I thought you should know." She opened the folder slowly, carefully, as if revealing a wound. Inside were my letters, dozens of them. Birthday cards with hand-drawn hearts. College advice written in ink-smudged margins. Updates from my hospital bed. Get well notes Jason had never replied to. He didn't know, Natalie said softly. She never gave him any of it. My throat closed, my hands shook. I recognized every word, every page, every forgotten effort to stay connected. Why would she hide them? I asked, barely above a whisper. Natalie shook her head. I don't know, but Jason, he never had the full story. The folder sat between us like a loaded weapon, not for revenge, but for truth. And in that moment I knew Jason deserved to choose his version of the past, and he deserved to hear mine. The night before the wedding, I sat at my kitchen table, the folder open before me. Letters I'd written in hope, drawings Jason made when he was 5, stick figures with messy crayon halos labeled me and mommy. A photo of him in my arms at age 2, both of us smeared in birthday cake. His hospital bracelet from the night he was born, and the baby blanket, soft with time, his name still embroidered in fading blue thread. I ran my fingers over every item like they were prayer beads, trying to make sense of the years I'd spent watching from a distance. I could burn it all. Let the lie stand. Let Rachel keep her curated version of Jason's life, the one where I'd simply disappeared. But I wouldn't do that. This wasn't about revenge. It never had been. This was about truth, and about giving my son what I'd never had. A choice. I folded the letters with care, placed each photo neatly, and zipped the folder closed. The weight of it wasn't heavy, but it carried decades. Tomorrow, he'd toast the woman who raised him, and I would be standing there, silent no longer. Not to make a scene, not to take anything back, but to finally give him everything I'd held on to for far too long. The reception was glowing. Fairy lights strung across the ceiling. Champagne flutes sparkling, laughter swirling like music. Jason stood tall at the head table, Natalie beaming beside him. His voice carried easily over the room as he raised his glass. To Rachel, he said, the woman who made me who I am today. Applause thundered. Glasses clinked. I stood in my navy blue dress, hands gripping the bag I hadn't released all evening. She raised me with love, he continued. She's the only mom I've ever known. The words hit like glass shattering inside my chest. My smile didn't falter, but it was tight, aching. And then I stood. Jason, I said, calm and clear, you forgot someone. The room hushed in an instant. All eyes turned. I walked slowly to the head table, each step echoing like a drumbeat. I reached into my bag and unzipped it with steady hands. The folder emerged, weathered, full, undeniable. I placed it in his hands, leaned in, and kissed his cheek. When you're ready, I whispered, read it. Then we'll talk. He stared at me, stunned. Natalie reached for his hand. I didn't wait for a response. I turned, walked out through the open doors, and into the night air. The sky above was full of stars, and for the first time in years, I breathed freely. A week passed. Then, one quiet morning, I heard a knock at my door. I opened it to find Jason, eyes red, shoulders low, the folder clutched in his hands like something sacred. I read everything, he said. I stepped aside. He walked in without another word and stood in the living room where he used to build pillow forts and fall asleep in my lap. Why didn't you fight back? He asked, voice cracking. Why didn't you tell me what she did? I looked at him, not the boy I'd raised, but the man he'd become. Because I believed in who you were becoming, I said, and I knew that one day the truth would find you. It didn't need to come from anger. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he pulled me into a hug, tight, desperate, like he was 6 again and scared of the thunder. I'm sorry, he whispered. We didn't speak much more that day. We didn't need to. He never called Rachel Mom again. But I forgave her. Some wounds turn people into ghosts, others into protectors. I chose to be the second. 2 years later, he wrapped his newborn daughter in that same embroidered baby blanket. The card read, "For Grandma Eliza." And when he said, "Thank you for raising me right," he looked me in the eyes and never looked away again.